I never thought that caring for a sick friend would end up being the perfect excuse for them to steal my home. I returned on an April afternoon, my soul weary but calm. I had spent 2 weeks caring for Eleanor, a dear friend facing her final treatment. I was met by a dry wind, an empty street, and my belongings in trash bags, lined up like refuse in front of the house I shared with my late husband for 40 years. That house still had the number he had nailed to the door with trembling, loving hands. And the doors were locked. They had changed the locks on the doors. I knocked, I banged, nothing. The guest room curtain moved slightly. I saw Bryn, my son's wife, cross her arms and disappear from the frame. Alaric didn't appear. They didn't come out. No one opened the door. My hands were trembling. I leaned against the mailbox, as if it could support the weight of what I was beginning to understand. My neighbor, Beatrix, crossed the street in her housecoat and slippers. Without a word, she wrapped me in an old blanket, my blanket, the one from the living room, and led me inside as if I were a lost child. "I was waiting for you," she murmured. For a second, I let myself be cared for. Why? How do you react when your own blood throws you out? How can you understand that the woman for whom you gave everything you had, even your privacy, your routine, your Sunday teas, now decides you're a burden? Because that's what I was to Bryn, an old piece of furniture, a nuisance, a shadow that was no longer useful to her. There were signs, of course. I'm not naive, but I never thought it would come to this. Beatrix put water on to boil for chamomile tea. I just stared at my things, scattered across her living room. Jars labeled in my handwriting, my locket with Sterling's photo, the tablecloths I embroidered with my mother. Objects that shouldn't be in trash bags, objects that told my story. And in that dense silence, Beatrix handed me a recording, an audio file her granddaughter had sent her by mistake. It was Bryn, in a conversation with someone, perhaps her mother, saying, "Once the old woman leaves, the house is ours. It's a matter of weeks. She doesn't even know what she's signing." The tea grew cold in my hands. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just let the sentence settle in my chest like a cold brick. The old woman, that's what she called me. I saved the audio to my phone, took a sip of tea, smoothed the edge of the tablecloth with my fingertip, and knew that my silence that night was over. I didn't knock on the door again, nor did I ask for explanations. I just called my old lawyer and the bank, because while they had thrown me out of my house, they didn't know that the joint account used to pay the mortgage still had my name on it. They didn't know that the old woman also knew how to play chess and never moved a piece without thinking 3 moves ahead. Did they really think I would stay quiet? I went asleep on Beatrix's couch, the blanket up to my neck and the recording in my heart. I wasn't alone, and although they had left me homeless, they had not left me without dignity. I was a nurse for over 30 years, head nurse at Brighton Coastal Hospital, where I knew every hallway like the back of my hand and every patient as if they were family. I don't say this out of vanity, but because for decades people called me by my name with respect, not contempt. Doctors consulted me, new mothers confided in me, and colleagues sought me out to solve what no one else could. "Genevieve has a firm hand and a soft heart," they used to say. And yes, that was me. My uniform hung impeccably every night. My medicine jars were labeled with precision. I still have my nurse's watch, even though the strap can no longer withstand much of a pulse. I met Sterling in an emergency room. He had brought his father in with complicated pneumonia, and well, I already knew that a man who cares for his father with such devotion couldn't be just anyone. He offered me coffee one night after his shift, and we never stopped talking after that. We bought the house shortly after. It was simple, the kind with a front garden and green shutters, but we built it with love. Sterling put up the shelves. I hung the curtains. Every wall has a story. He planted the rose bush in the back on the day we found out we were expecting Alaric, and when he died, I continued to water that rose bush as if it were speaking to me. We were a family of hard work. Nothing was handed to us. There were no inheritances or shortcuts. I worked double shifts to pay for Alaric's school, and Sterling repaired other people's boilers so ours could stay warm in the winter. And when Alaric married Bryn, I was genuinely happy. I thought he was building his own nest. I even offered to let them live with us temporarily when he lost his job. "Just a few months, Mom," he said, "while we get settled." That was 3 years ago. At first, Bryn was kind. She made pleasant comments, brought me tea, and laughed at my hospital stories. But slowly, her tone changed. Her laughter became tense, as if everything I said was an embarrassing anecdote. And Alaric, oh my Alaric, began to disappear within his own marriage, as if being a son and a husband were incompatible. Still, I told myself, this is life. Things change, you have to give them space. But what kind of space leaves out a mother who gave her life for that house? Sometimes I sit in silence, remembering my living room full of laughter, the Christmas nights with handmade garlands, the birthdays where the cake was my mother's recipe. And now, that same house where I was once the heart no longer has room for me. But I don't regret loving, I don't regret working or sacrificing, because everything I did with intention. And if my years as a nurse taught me anything, it's that even the ugliest wound can heal with patience and a good dose of truth. And that night, the truth was beginning to emerge. Because I may no longer be the Genevieve who ran through the hospital corridors, but I am still the woman who won't be broken by a new lock or a daughter-in-law. The signs were there. They always are. It's just that, out of love, habit, or fear, you choose not to see them. It all started with small omissions. One day, I found out from Beatrix that there had been a dinner with Alaric's friends. "And you weren't there, Genevieve?" she asked with a frown. I shrugged. Bryn said it was just for young people. Another time, a neighbor commented on how beautiful the house looked decorated for Halloween. I was stunned. I didn't know they had decorated. I went out that afternoon and saw pumpkins on the porch, orange lights, fake cobwebs. And not a single word had been said to me. And then came the most subtle, but cruelest part, the planting of doubt. Bryn would start sentences with, "Are you sure, Genevieve? That's not how it was. I think you're confusing things." Once, I swore I had left the mail on the table. Hours later, she found it in the garage. "Maybe you were distracted, mother-in-law." Other times, she would laugh with Alaric about something I had supposedly misstated, small things, like birthday dates, movie titles, details from the past. And in front of others, in a sweet voice, she would say, "Genevieve has been having memory lapses lately, but it's normal for her age, isn't it?" That phrase, repeated like a mantra, began to sink in. It made me doubt myself. Did I say that? Did I misunderstand? Am I losing my mind? I, who was a head nurse, who organized shifts and dosages with the precision of a Swiss watch. I, who read 2 books a month and could still recite the world's capitals. But gaslighting, that elegant way of driving a sane woman crazy, doesn't always come with screams. Sometimes it comes with a smile and a cup of tea. Bryn was an expert at it. And Alaric, my son, became a silent spectator. When she corrected me, he didn't intervene. When she excluded me, he didn't ask why. It was as if he had accepted a version of me that didn't exist. The final straw was the end-of-year party. They invited several friends, and I helped prepare the food for 2 days. On the day of the event, they asked me to serve the drinks and stay discreet, so you don't get stressed, mother-in-law, okay? I felt like a housekeeper. I sat at the end of the table, next to the coat rack, while they toasted to a new chapter in the life of the house, a chapter that clearly did not include me. When it was over, I picked up my chamomile tea, the same as every night, and went upstairs with my heart in a knot. I sat on my bed and began to fold the blanket Sterling used for his naps, my talisman, that piece of fabric that still held his scent. And I asked myself, if I erase myself enough, will they stop looking at me like I'm a mistake? But deep down, I knew it wasn't that they saw me as a mistake, they saw me as an obstacle. And obstacles, in their world, are removed slowly, with fake smiles, until one day you open the door and there's no lock that recognizes you. It was Beatrix who showed it to me one ordinary afternoon, as we were having chamomile tea in her kitchen. "My granddaughter sent me this by mistake," she said, holding her phone in front of me. "I thought you should hear it." It was an audio file, barely 10 seconds long, but enough to shatter years of illusions. Once the old woman leaves, the house is ours. It's a matter of weeks. She doesn't even know what she's signing. The voice was unmistakable. Bryn. My heart stopped for a moment, as if the world had turned to glass and someone had dropped a stone in the center. The old woman. She doesn't even know. That's what they thought of me, what they said when they thought no one was listening. I remained silent. Not a tear, not a word. Just a deep breath, like the ones I used to take before entering a complicated surgery in my nursing years. I replayed the audio. I listened again and then again until every syllable was burned into my memory like fire on skin. Beatrix looked at me with a mixture of tenderness and fury. You're not crazy, Genevieve. You never were. They're gaslighting you and they're celebrating it behind your back. I nodded silently. I knew it, of course. I had sensed it for months, but hearing it, that's something else. Giving sound to betrayal leaves you breathless. It's as if all the puzzle pieces fall into place at once, and what you see is not just ugly, it's cruel. I thought about the times Bryn corrected me in front of others, how Alaric would look at the floor when I spoke, the photos of me that disappeared from the shelves, the dinners I wasn't invited to, the distracted signature between cake and flour. It was all part of a plan, and I, the woman who handled medical codes without batting an eye, had fallen for it like a novice. That night I didn't sleep. I sat with Sterling's locket, twisting its chain between my fingers. I spoke to him in a low voice, as I did in the first months after his death. They want me out, Sterling. Out of the house, out of their lives. And they have it all planned. And there, in the dim light of Beatrix's guest room, I understood something. They hadn't betrayed me all at once. They had eroded me, bit by bit, like a drop of water wears away a stone. But what they didn't know is that this stone, this old woman they thought was finished, also had a sharp edge. I saved the audio to my own phone. I renamed it Reminder because that's what it was, proof, a warning, an anchor for when I doubted myself. And though everything in me screamed for justice, I forced myself to wait, to not act from the wound, but to observe and plan. Because if I've learned anything in my life, it's this. Decisions made in calm have a sharper edge than those made in anger. I didn't confront Bryn. I didn't throw the phone at her or face her in front of Alaric. Not yet. I just served my chamomile tea that night, as always, with a slice of lemon and told myself, this doesn't end here. Because now I had what I needed, the proof, the truth, and the certainty that the next time they called me the old woman, it would be whispered between lawyers. I didn't slam doors. There were no screams or scenes. When you understand you've been pushed out of the game, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away from the board with your head held high. I waited until the house was empty. It was a Saturday. Bryn was out with friends at her yoga class, where she was probably also talking about me with veiled laughter, and Alaric was working a double shift at the hospital. The grandson was with an aunt. I took my purse and the same blue suitcase I used for nursing conferences. I packed only the essentials, my locket, some recipe books, Sterling's watch, and an old blanket that still smelled like home. I passed through the kitchen. It was spotless, as always. My teapot was no longer in its place, of course. They had put it away who knows where. I took a chamomile tea bag from the jar that bore my name. Yes, I still labeled my things, though it made no difference anymore, and left it on the table. Unbrewed, without a cup, just as a gesture, a final point. I went up to my room for the last time. I touched the headboard of the bed, the one I shared with Sterling and then occupied alone for years. I took the floral cushion I embroidered when Alaric was a child, a single memory from each room, as if I were collecting clues from a life that no longer belonged to me. When I walked through the door, I closed it gently. Not for them, but for me, because they didn't even deserve the echo of my anger. Beatrix was waiting for me at her entrance with open arms. She said nothing, just helped me with my suitcase and led me to her guest room, where a patchwork quilt and a tulip-shaped lamp welcomed me as if they knew I arrived broken. That night, we had lentil soup for dinner. She sat across from me, carefully smoothing the tablecloth, while we talked about simple things. She told me I could stay as long as I needed, that the room had belonged to her sister, and she was happy to see it full of life again. I didn't cry, not even when she handed me a hot cup and said, "You are not a burden, you are a gift they didn't know how to care for." I slept better than I had in years. In the morning, I walked to the park, took out my old notebook, the one I used for medical notes and recipes, and began to write a list. Not of tasks, not of groceries, but of decisions. Seek legal advice, gather house documents, close joint accounts, review the will, and remember, you are not alone. I underlined that last point twice, because although they kicked me out of my own house, they didn't kick me out of my story, and I still had much to write. I didn't go looking for them. I didn't call. I didn't leave dramatic notes. What's the point of explanations? When they are deserved, they come on their own. And when they're not even 1,000 words make a difference. Alaric didn't call me, and neither did Bryn. Perhaps they thought I had given up, that the old woman had finally understood her place. And yes, I did understand. I understood that my place was not there, not as a shadow, not as an emotional servant, not as a decorative ornament. My place was in dignity, in the silence that precedes justice. And while they celebrated their freedom, I began to rebuild myself. From the outside, yes, but also from within, because sometimes the bravest thing is not to stay and fight, but to know when to leave with your head held high and your heart whole. I'm not one to trust lawyers. They always seemed like people who talk in complicated ways to charge high fees. But when Beatrix told me, I know someone who can help, something in her tone made me pay attention. Her name is Miss Thorne. She's tough, but fair. And best of all, she's allergic to abusers disguised as family. I agreed to meet. The appointment was in a modest office, no frills, but immaculate. Miss Thorne, a woman in her 60s with short hair, thin glasses, and an unadorned voice, received me without ceremony. She shook my hand and said, "Tell me everything. Don't leave out a single drop." And so I did, in a firm voice, without tears, as one does when they have nothing left to lose. I told her about the document I signed, how they isolated me, the recording, every detail, even the smallest ones. Miss Thorne took notes without interrupting, just nodding, like someone who has heard this story 1,000 times, but never gets used to the disgust. When I finished, she put away her notebook and said, "What they've done to you is called financial exploitation. It's a form of abuse, and it's more common than you think." I froze. Not because of the legal term, but because of the validation. Someone finally said it plainly. It wasn't a misunderstanding, it was abuse. Miss Thorne continued, "The power of attorney you signed can be revoked. You still have rights as a partial owner if the transfer was not legally completed. We are going to review the deeds, the joint accounts, and every inch of your situation." I nodded, yes, but inside I was struggling with a mix of relief and anger. All this time, I thought I was exaggerating. "And what about the recording?" I asked. "A gem," Miss Thorne smiled for the first time. "Admissible as evidence. It's proof of intent. If this goes to trial, it will carry more weight than 1,000 excuses." Beatrix held my hand as Miss Thorne explained the plan. There was something powerful about finally having a legal voice on my side. Not a supportive neighbor, not a worried friend, but someone who could act. We left the office with a folder under my arm and a date. In 2 weeks, we would begin the process of revoking the power of attorney and filing a formal complaint. "Are you ready for this?" Miss Thorne asked before we parted ways. "Because it's not fast or easy." I looked at her without blinking. "I'm not looking for easy. I'm looking for justice." On the way back, Beatrix stopped the car and looked at me with that gaze that only years and shared battles can give. "You know what I admire about you, Genevieve? That even after all this, you still believe in doing things the right way." I smiled at her. "I won't stoop to their level. They already threw me out of my house, but I won't throw myself out of my own principles." I slept better that night. Not because everything was resolved, but because, for the first time in a long time, I had a plan and an ally. And sometimes, all a woman needs to rebuild herself is another woman to tell her, "You are not alone, and you are not crazy." It was only a week, just one, and the castle of lies that Bryn had so carefully built began to crumble like wet paper. Beatrix and I were having tea when the doorbell rang. Outside, in the fine spring rain, stood Bryn. Disheveled, without makeup, soaked, and with her eyes swollen like I had never seen them before. "Genevieve, please." Beatrix, protective as a she-wolf, stepped forward. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to her," Bryn said in a thin voice. Just a moment, please." I watched her from the doorway, without moving, not a step forward, not a gesture. It wasn't out of cruelty, it was out of clarity. Bryn was trembling, I don't know if from the cold, anger, or fear. Maybe from all three. The bank. They started. They froze the accounts. And today I got fired. They said there's an audit and someone leaked emails. They're saying it was me. I said nothing. I didn't raise my voice or even an eyebrow. I just looked at her. Alaric's lawyer says they can't pay the mortgage this month. And since your signature isn't there, the house can't be renewed or refinanced. They say it's going into foreclosure. Silence. Just the rain falling on the porch. Genevieve, please. Can we fix this? For Alaric, for the boy, we just need a little help. Her voice broke, her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, just one, I saw a broken woman. Not broken by the system, not by life, but by her own decisions. Beatrix took a step forward as if to close the door, but I raised my hand. I wanted to hear her out. Bryn clasped her hands as if in prayer. I know I was wrong, I know I treated you badly, but we didn't plan for it to be like this. We just wanted stability, we just. Just what? I finally asked. My voice was low but firm. You just wanted to get rid of me slowly? You just wanted me to leave without a fuss? You just wanted my house and my silence. She covered her face, I don't know if out of shame or exhaustion, maybe both. I didn't come to fight, she said. I came to ask for help. Help. After everything she said, after everything she did, now she was asking for help. I took a deep breath. I felt the weight of the years on my shoulders, the betrayal, the abandonment, the nights of doubt, the voiceless afternoons. And still, I felt no hatred. I looked up, met her eyes, and said, now you know what it feels like to have nowhere to go. But I would never put you out on the street. Her knees buckled, and in that instant, she understood. There was no hatred, but there was also no turning back. Thank you, she murmured. Can I come in? Just for a moment. I shook my head, gently, like a tired mother, like a woman who no longer carries what is not hers to bear. No, Bryn. No more. You close this door yourself. And then, with a calm greater than my pain, I turned the handle and closed it. Not with fury, but with finality. 3 days later, it was Alaric. He didn't come with shouts or fury. He came with the same face he had as a child when he broke something and didn't know how to confess. Beatrix was in the garden. I was knitting in the living room as I did every afternoon, the old blanket on my lap, my silent refuge. I heard his steps on the porch, hesitant, guilty. He knocked once, then twice. I got up, opened the door, and there was my son, the man I helped raise with love, discipline, and sacrifices I never fully told him about. The same one who had watched as they cornered me in my own home and chose to remain silent. Hi, Mom, he said. I didn't know whether to hug him or leave him standing there, so I stood still. Can I come in? I shook my head. Mom, please. I didn't come to fight. Then why did you come? Alaric looked down. Everything is falling apart, he murmured. Bryn can't sleep. The bank sends us letters every day. The lawyer says there could be legal consequences, and the boy. His voice broke. The boy asks for you. That you touched my soul because for a long time he had spoken to me as one speaks to an assistant, not a mother. I don't know how we got here, he added. Oh, but I do. And this time, I told him. We got here because you allowed it. Because you were silent when it suited you. Because you chose comfort over loyalty. Because you sold out your mother for marital peace. That's not true, isn't it? Do you want me to play the recording? Do you want me to read the papers you signed without reading? Do you want me to show you the list of times you looked the other way? A heavy silence descended, thicker than the humid air of a summer afternoon. He fixed his gaze on me, his eyes glistening, reflecting the light like pools on a rainy day. And for a fleeting moment, a mere heartbeat in the grand scheme of things, yes, for a fleeting second, the years seemed to melt away, and I saw a ghost of the boy he once was, the child who used to toddle through the garden, his small hands clutching wildflowers, offerings of love. I remembered him climbing onto my lap, his weight a comforting pressure, presenting me with crooked drawings, masterpieces in crayon and imagination, testaments to a bond one thought unbreakable. Mom, he choked out, the word a strangled whisper, barely audible above the hum of the refrigerator. I didn't know what to do. I was lost, adrift. My voice, though soft, held an edge sharper than any knife. Doing nothing, Alaric, deliberately choosing inaction. That was your choice. You made a conscious decision. But we needed you, your family needed you, Bryn needed you, The words caught in my throat, a lump of unshed tears threatening to spill over. I raised a hand, cutting him off, a silent barrier erected between us. No, Alaric, let's be honest. You don't need me, not really. You need what I have, what I used to provide. And that chapter, that source of support, that wellspring of resources, that's over. It's dry. I witnessed his pride, that carefully constructed facade of strength and self-assurance, begin to crumble, like an ancient statue slowly eroding under the relentless assault of wind and rain. I saw the strong son, the man who had always been my rock, transform before my very eyes into a broken man, his shoulders slumped, his spirit defeated. I didn't come for money, Mom. I swear. I came because I miss you. I miss the way things were. Right there, in that fragile, vulnerable admission, my dears, that's where I felt the cruelest sting, the deepest cut. It was a betrayal of memory, a disregard for the years of silent support. I looked him straight in the eye, meeting his gaze unflinchingly, and with the voice I used in the operating room, cold and clinical, devoid of emotion, without a moment's hesitation, I told him, I didn't lose the house, Alaric. Houses can be rebuilt, repaired, replaced. I lost something far more precious, something irreplaceable. I lost a son. And that I truly cannot get back. That wound will never fully heal. He recoiled, taking a step back as if struck, wounded by the force of my words, perhaps finally, belatedly, understanding the full weight of his actions, the far-reaching consequences of his choices. I'll leave a letter for you in the mailbox, I told him, my voice softer now, tinged with weariness. And then I want you to take some time. Not to try and convince me, not to manipulate me with empty promises, but to look at yourself in the mirror. To truly see the person you've become. I closed the door, softer this time than with Bryn, a gentle click replacing the resounding slam, but more definitively, the finality resonating in the silence that followed. Because there is no worse betrayal, no deeper wound, than the one that comes with the face of love, masked in affection but fueled by selfishness. And sometimes, when words fail, when trust is shattered, silence is the only language we have left to command respect, to enforce boundaries, to protect ourselves. I left it in the mailbox on a clear morning, the air crisp and cool, carrying the scent of the sea. The sky was clean, almost brazenly blue, a vibrant, unapologetic hue, as if it wanted to give me the farewell my house never did, a send-off filled with hope and promise. The letter wasn't long or resentful, filled with bitterness or accusations. It was simply true, a raw and honest outpouring of my heart. Alaric, I don't know when you stopped seeing me as your mother, as a source of unconditional love, and started treating me as a burden, an obligation, someone to be tolerated rather than cherished. Maybe it was gradual, a slow erosion of affection. Maybe it was sudden, a seismic shift in your perception. But what I do know, what remains etched in my memory, is that the silence you chose, the deliberate withholding of communication, hurt more than any words ever could have. It spoke volumes, painting a clear picture of your indifference. I'm not writing for an apology, not seeking remorse or false contrition, or for you to give me anything back, expecting some form of restitution for my years of devotion. I'm writing because I need closure for myself, a sense of completion, because I don't want to take the unspoken words, the unexpressed feelings, the unresolved emotions to my grave. I need to release them, to set them free. I didn't lose the house, son. That was merely a material possession, a structure of bricks and mortar. I lost something much more valuable, something intangible and irreplaceable: trust. The bedrock of our relationship, the foundation upon which our bond was built, crumbled and dissolved. And when a mother loses that, when that fundamental trust is irrevocably broken, there's not much left to save. The core of the relationship is hollowed out. I did everything with love. I poured my heart and soul into taking care of you, your family, the house, the garden, nurturing everything within my reach, until they made me feel like I was out of place in every corner, a stranger in my own home. Now I understand my mistake. The flaw in my approach was not setting boundaries sooner, not establishing clear lines of respect. I thought love was enough, a boundless and unconditional force, but it's not. Sometimes love needs a frame, a structure to contain it, a door that knows when to close in time, protecting it from being taken for granted, from being exploited. I am well, I am safe, and I am at peace. These are not empty platitudes, but heartfelt affirmations. Don't look for me for a while. Not because I don't love you, because the love remains, a persistent ember glowing beneath the ashes of disappointment, but because I need to heal in silence, to mend my broken spirit, without more explanations, without more broken promises, without more opportunities for disappointment, with love. Mom. I didn't know if he read it, if the words resonated, if they pierced through his defenses. I didn't need to know. Those words were primarily for me, a cathartic release, like someone leaving a stone on the shore so they don't forget where the journey began, a tangible reminder of the past. That same afternoon, with a lightness I hadn't felt in years, I took my things, my few treasured possessions, and moved into a small apartment by the sea, with large windows that framed breathtaking views and the invigorating smell of salt air that filled every room. Beatrix, my dear friend, helped me settle in, her presence a comforting balm. She arranged my tea jars in alphabetical order, a testament to her meticulous nature, hung Sterling's blanket, a cherished memento, on the back of the rocking chair, and smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. This place suits you, Genevieve. Quiet but strong. She was right. The apartment radiated a sense of serenity and resilience. I walked on the beach that night, the sand cool and soft beneath my bare feet. The water barely touched my ankles, the gentle waves whispering secrets to the shore. The fresh air tousled my hair, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel nostalgia, that bittersweet longing for the past. I felt possibility, the exhilarating sense of a new beginning. The past no longer weighed me down, a heavy burden dragging me under. It was a part of me, an integral chapter in my story, yes, but it no longer dictated my steps, no longer defined my future. I bought a new notebook, its pages crisp and clean, and called it Second Life, a declaration of intent, a promise to myself. And on the first page, in bold letters, I wrote, "Do not forget what I am worth." A reminder to cherish my self-worth and to live life on my own terms.